Elara never thought of herself as someone particularly spiritual. She was practical, sensible, a realist, or so she told herself. Life, to her, was a pattern of events that either worked in your favor or didn't. Some people seemed blessed with good fortune, others forever struggled. That was just how it was. Then, one bright April morning, while scrolling half awake through her phone, she stumbled upon a video titled Quantum Manifestation Explained. Why it's so simple, yet nobody does it. Something about the phrasing caught her, bold, almost arrogant in its certainty. She clicked out of idle curiosity. The man in the video spoke calmly, like someone explaining gravity. Your reality doesn't respond to your wishes, he said. It responds to your frequency. The sentence struck her like a chime in a silent room. Frequency. She paused the video, replayed it. He went on to explain that our thoughts and emotions vibrate at measurable energies, and the universe mirrors them back as experiences. That life was not happening to us but through us, that we were not receivers of reality, but transmitters shaping it in every moment. Elara frowned. It sounded poetic, maybe even possible, but wasn't it just wishful thinking dressed in science words? Still, the idea clung to her mind all day like a melody she couldn't stop humming. A few days later, she decided to test it. Something harmless, something small. She wrote in her notebook, "I will find a blue feather." She imagined it, vividly, the color, the texture, the strange delight of discovering it. Then she let it go, feeling a bit foolish. 2 days later, while walking home from work, a small blue feather drifted down in front of her, landing on the pavement near her feet. She froze. A coincidence, she told herself quickly, just a weird one. But the part of her that had always whispered what if, grew a little louder. That night, she stayed up reading more about quantum manifestation, how reality behaves like a wave until observed, how emotion acts like a tuning fork, aligning energy into form. The words weren't just theoretical anymore, they felt alive. She began noticing patterns, the way her mood affected her encounters, how small moments of gratitude seemed to open unexpected doors. Her journal filled with experiments. I am aligned with abundance. I attract ease and creativity. I am supported in all directions. She wasn't trying to convince herself anymore, she was observing. Watching her inner world sculpt the outer one in subtle, almost imperceptible shifts. Spring unfolded around her in color and scent, mirroring her own awakening. For the first time, she didn't feel like life was something she had to chase or fix. It was something she could tune into. Every thought, every emotion was a note in the symphony of her experience. Elara began walking slower, breathing deeper, noticing how the world seemed to respond to her energy. The more peaceful she felt, the more peaceful her surroundings became. She wondered how she could have missed something so simple for so long. That reality wasn't distant or random, but intimate and alive, waiting for her participation. She didn't tell anyone yet. It felt fragile, sacred, like a new language only she could hear. But deep inside, she knew something fundamental had shifted. The seed had been planted. And life, it seemed, was listening. By the time summer rolled in, Elara was no longer dabbling in the idea of manifestation, she was living it. What had started as quiet curiosity in the spring had evolved into daily practice. Every morning, before checking her phone or rushing into the world, she would sit by her window, eyes closed, hands resting on her knees, and breathe. 10 deep breaths in, 10 slow breaths out. She focused not on what she wanted, but on how she wanted to feel. She discovered that the feeling was the true language of the universe. When she felt calm, life flowed. When she panicked, everything tangled. The more she studied, the more she understood. It wasn't about thinking positive, it was about tuning positive, adjusting her inner frequency until it matched the life she wished to live. Still, it wasn't perfect. Some days she'd feel aligned, almost luminous, as if the world bent gently to meet her halfway. Then one small inconvenience, a late bus or a dismissive email, could throw her out of sync. But she began to notice that even those moments of frustration were feedback, not failure. The universe, she realized, wasn't punishing her, it was mirroring her. Elara kept a manifestation journal. On one page, she wrote her intentions: a new job where she could create, an apartment with more sunlight, a sense of ease in her body. On the opposite page, she wrote how she'd feel when each came true: gratitude, freedom, peace. She didn't write them as future hopes but as present frequencies. When she told her friend Arya about it over iced coffee one hot afternoon, Arya laughed. "So, let me get this straight. You just feel good, and then magic things happen." Elara smiled. "Not magic. Physics." Arya rolled her eyes. "If it's that simple, why isn't everyone doing it?" Elara thought for a moment, watching the condensation drip down her glass. "Because it's simple, but not easy. People want results, not resonance. They want to see proof before they believe, but it doesn't work that way. You have to believe before you see." Most people, she noticed, were addicted to external evidence. They wanted to control the outer world without realizing that it was a reflection of their inner one. They'd affirm abundance while still vibrating lack, pray for love while holding on to fear, demand change while refusing to feel different. It wasn't that the principle was hard, it was that surrendering the old self felt terrifying. Through summer, Elara practiced the art of non-resistance. She stopped overanalyzing outcomes. If something didn't go her way, she reminded herself, energy first, reality second. She let emotions rise without judging them, treating each feeling as a clue to what she was broadcasting. And then, little things began to shift. Unexpected compliments from strangers. Invitations to projects that matched her passions. A sense of timing so precise it felt orchestrated. The universe, it seemed, loved cooperation. She began walking through the city as if she were in a quiet conversation with existence itself. A red light wasn't an obstacle, it was a pause, an alignment. A random smile from a passerby felt like confirmation that she was in tune. But as the days grew hotter, so did the friction between what she was learning and what others believed. Conversations became strange. When she spoke about energy or frequency, people nodded politely or changed the subject. Elara understood then that the simplicity of quantum manifestation was its greatest disguise. The ego craved struggle, the mind wanted complexity. And yet, every morning, when sunlight poured through her window, she felt the same quiet certainty: this worked. Not because she forced life to obey her, but because she had learned to harmonize with it. That summer became her proving ground. Through trial, doubt, and wonder, Elara discovered the truth behind the phrase that had first drawn her in. Reality doesn't respond to your wishes. It responds to your frequency. And she was finally learning how to play her own note. As the first chill crept into the air, Elara began to feel an unsettling heaviness she couldn't quite name. The summer's golden rhythm had carried her with ease, synchronicities, lightness, and a quiet confidence that life was on her side. But as autumn arrived, something shifted. The flow slowed. Opportunities that had once appeared effortlessly now seemed to stall. The excitement she had been riding for months began to fade, replaced by silence and uncertainty. She told herself not to worry. Energy fluctuates, she reminded herself, repeating the words she'd once written so confidently in her journal. Yet, the stillness frightened her. She had grown so used to the gentle magic of things aligning that when it paused, she wondered if she had somehow broken the spell. Her mornings felt different. Where she once woke with anticipation, now she woke with doubt. She'd sit at her window, breathing as always, but her thoughts buzzed louder than her heart. Maybe I'm just fooling myself, she thought. Maybe this was never real. Her journal entries turned hesitant. I trust the process, she'd write, but the words felt thin, like echoes of a truth she could no longer fully reach. The job she had been hoping for fell through. The landlord raised her rent. Even small things, a missed call, a delayed payment, an unreturned message, began to pile into a quiet mountain of frustration. One evening, she went for a walk in the park, seeking comfort in the rhythm of the changing trees. The path was lined with leaves of amber and rust, the air thick with the scent of earth. As she walked, she watched the trees let go, without struggle, without sadness. The leaves didn't cling to the branches or fight the wind. They simply released. Something inside her softened. For months, she had been trying to stay in alignment, to keep her frequency high. But in doing so, she realized, she was still trying to control. She had turned trust into another form of effort. She had mistaken surrender for performance. She sat on a bench beneath a maple tree and whispered aloud, maybe it's not about making things happen. Maybe it's about allowing them. The thought lingered in the cool air, calm and steady. She realized that nature never forced anything. Spring didn't beg to bloom, winter didn't apologize for its stillness. There was a rhythm deeper than effort, a natural unfolding. Perhaps her manifestations, too, had seasons. From that evening on, Elara stopped trying so hard. She still meditated, still wrote in her journal, but with a lighter touch. Instead of setting intentions, she simply expressed gratitude, not for what she wanted, but for what was. For the lessons disguised as delays, the pauses that protected her from forcing what wasn't yet ready. Slowly, peace returned. Not the bright, sparkling excitement of summer, but a quieter kind, the kind that came from acceptance. She realized that the quantum field she had read about wasn't some mystical energy outside her, it was the space inside her that held infinite possibility. To access it, she didn't need to push, she only needed to trust. The more she let go, the more aligned she felt. She began to notice subtle signs again, a stranger's kind words, an unexpected refund, the way her intuition seemed sharper. Life was moving, but differently now, slower, deeper, wiser. One night, as she watched leaves swirl in the wind outside her window, she wrote in her journal. Greater than, I understand now. The universe doesn't rush, even the tree must let go before it can bloom again. Manifestation isn't about control, it's about cooperation. I am learning how to fall gracefully. And with that, she closed her journal and smiled. For the first time, she wasn't waiting for proof. She was the proof, a living reminder that even in stillness, transformation was quietly unfolding beneath the surface. Winter came softly, as if the world itself exhaled. The noise of autumn's unraveling had faded, leaving behind a deep, silvery stillness. Snow gathered on rooftops and tree branches, and the city seemed to slow its pulse. Elara felt that same quiet within her. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't chasing alignment or measuring progress. She was simply being, and that, she realized, was the very state she'd been reaching for all along. She spent her mornings by the window, cup of tea in hand, watching the snowflakes fall in slow, perfect spirals. There was something hypnotic about their descent, effortless, graceful, inevitable. Each one found its place without resistance. It reminded her of how her own life had begun to feel, unforced, guided by an invisible rhythm she no longer needed to understand. The job she'd once longed for had come through in December, unexpectedly, after months of silence. But by then, she wasn't clinging to it like a lifeline. It arrived gently, as if it had been waiting for her to stop pushing, waiting for her to reach a frequency of calm trust. The position was everything she had once hoped for, creative, flexible, meaningful, yet what struck her most wasn't the job itself. It was how natural it felt. There was no triumph, no ecstatic disbelief. Just peace. As if life had quietly rearranged itself to match her inner world, once she stopped demanding proof. She reflected often during those long winter nights. Sitting beside a small lamp, journal open, she reread her entries from the past year, the wonder of spring, the confidence of summer, the doubt of autumn. Every phase had been necessary, each one a step in teaching her the same lesson from different angles, that creation wasn't about control. It was about coherence. The more she looked back, the more she understood why most people never fully practice quantum manifestation. It wasn't because it was too complex or too mystical. It was because it required surrender, the willingness to stop clinging to fear, identity, or struggle. People preferred to try harder, rather than trust deeper. They wanted visible proof before belief, when in truth, belief is the mechanism that creates proof. Elara used to think that manifestation meant bending reality to her will. Now she saw it differently. It was a partnership, a constant dialogue between the visible and the unseen, the physical and the energetic. Her role wasn't to demand or manipulate, but to stay in tune. To maintain her inner harmony so that what matched it could naturally find her. She started noticing how her thoughts carried subtle vibrations, how a single moment of fear could ripple through her day, and how one act of gratitude could dissolve resistance like melting snow. She no longer judged herself for her emotions. If sadness appeared, she allowed it. If joy came, she savored it. She learned to let every feeling flow without attaching to it. The result was a steady inner clarity that no circumstance could shake. One night, while snow fell thick and silent outside, she wrote her final reflection of the year. Greater than, quantum manifestation is not magic. It is remembering. Remembering that the world is not separate from me, that everything I perceive is responding to who I am being in this moment. When I change within, the outer must shift to meet me. That is not belief, it is law. When she finished writing, she set down her pen and looked out into the winter night. The streetlights glowed softly against the snow, the world bathed in quiet light. She smiled, feeling a deep stillness in her chest, not the fragile stillness of waiting, but the grounded peace of knowing. It struck her then that she no longer desired to manifest anything specific. Her focus had shifted from things to states, from wanting to being. She was no longer chasing the next alignment, because she was aligned. That was the simplicity no one talked about. Once you realize you are the source, the seeking ends. She took a slow breath, letting it mist against the cold glass. The snowflakes outside seemed to shimmer like particles of light, each one unique, yet all part of the same endless field. For the first time, Elara felt the full truth of it, not as theory, but as lived experience. She wasn't separate from the quantum field. She was the field, expressing itself as her life. And with that understanding, she closed her journal, leaned back in her chair, and let the winter night wrap around her in perfect stillness. Nothing was missing. Nothing was forced. Everything, at last, was in harmony.